Welcome back to Unsportsmanlike Conduct. I'm your host, the Hulk, Harrison Gurney, and it's a solo mission today. I'm going to be talking about, firstly, Super Bowl preview. I'm going to be going through a few of the key points in the game, and then I will hit you with my prediction as well for the game. Then we're going to move into the top five coaching moves of 2026 so far, in my opinion. I think it's a good time now to have a look at the new landscape and see what's coming up for the season. And then finally, I'm going to hit what is potentially a bit of a hot take, but I really think that potentially Mac Jones could be the next Sam Darnold, and I will tell you why. So let's get into the Super Bowl preview. I love the Super Bowl. It's a massive occasion, and this year's matchup is really interesting. You get a rematch from the infamous 1 yard line beast mode uh, controversy. Um, I really think that this game is going to be about the defenses, and it's because they're both elite defenses. Um, if you just look at the points per game allowed in the last regular season, the Seahawks are first with 17.2, and the Patriots are fourth with 18.8. That's two top five defenses, and those numbers are really good. It's been a really, really strong defensive year. You think of Denver's defense, you think of Houston's defense, and these two, they are really, really a cut above in terms of defensive performance. And I think it's really going to be put on display. And that's partially because of the second reason, which is that I think the offenses could really struggle this year. Um, Look, it's Drake May's second year, and yes, he's been on a run. I don't think he's going to get. I don't think the moment's going to be too big for him, but I think look, you're naturally going to tighten up a little bit, right? I think the same will happen for Sam Darnold. I think he is going to tighten up as well, um, but maybe not to the extent that maybe Drake May will, just because he's been around the block a bit more. I don't think that's going to be the defining factor for the game. I actually don't think the quarterback play is going to be one of the biggest impacts in this game, as it normally would be in not only a big game, but just in any game in general. I don't see the quarterback play being the defining factor of this game. Um, let's have a look at what I think in terms of the overall play of the game, because the offenses I think are going to struggle, and both defenses are elite statistically and just with the eye test, they're elite. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I really don't find that an off-putting factor in terms of the spectacle of the game itself. I like watching a defensive battle. It's proper football, having to actually work your way down the field, and if you have to take a field goal, you have to take a field goal. But I like that the defenses are going to be the ones that are setting the pace and setting the tone of the game. I think it makes for a really interesting game, and for fans who maybe are new or just getting into the sport, I I really implore you to try and engage with it as much as possible, because defenses, once you start sort of getting into the defensive side of the ball and learning just how difficult their job is when an elite defense is out there, um, it's a really, really spectacular thing to watch, and we're going to have two on display. So yeah, I'm really excited for it, despite it maybe not having that box office appeal that two high flying offenses could potentially bring to the game. Um, because of this, I think that field position and special teams are going to be crucial to this game. The special teams as a whole, interestingly, the Seahawks have the better reputation in terms of the special teams, and um, I do think I think it's interesting because actually New England has statistically had a better special teams season. If you look at the PFF rankings, the New England Patriots are actually slightly above. I think they're at like 91.1 for a special teams ranking, and the Seahawks had like 87.4 or something. It's like in that ballpark. So they're both very good special teams units, but I think the slight difference for me is that the Seahawks have had a tougher schedule, and that when stats are quite tight like that, I always tend to sort of give the edge to the team that's had the tougher schedule, because it's harder to punt return well and kick well and do all the important jobs that the special teams do in terms of getting good field position. Um, it's harder to do that against organized teams which are well coached, rather than teams that potentially don't have that level of coaching and don't have that level of organization that are needed to really just like do some of the basics well. Um, so I give the slight edge to San Francisco in terms to Seattle in terms of the special teams itself, despite them not having the bigger numbers. Um, things like the muffed punt recovery, for example, for Seattle, the special teams turned up in a big moment. And yes, you can say the Rams special teams was a shambles, which it has been all year, but that you still have to go and make that play, and they've been doing it all year consistently. So have the Patriots, but just against lesser teams, I feel. Now let's get to the X factor of the game, because this is really where I think the game's going to be won or lost. The O-line play, and I'm specifically looking at New England's new O-line play here. They're bottom 10 in pressure rate with 35.1% pressure rate. That is putting a lot of pressure on Drake May. And granted, he's a dual threat quarterback. He's maybe not perceived as such, but he rushes all the time. He's scrambling, he's making plays, and he is looking to throw first, which is maybe why he doesn't get that perception, but he is a dual threat QB. But then if you just look outside of that and go to sack rate, which does also include Drake May's ability to sort of feel the pocket, they go from bottom 10 in pressure rate to bottom 5 in sack rate. 7.8% is their sack rate, which culminated in 48 sacks in the regular season. Now, as a Bears fan, I'm very familiar with the detrimental effect that sacks can have from last year with Caleb. And I think it is, especially in a game like this, as I've touched on, where the special teams are going to be so important for field position. If you keep taking chunk losses and making it really difficult for yourself to get back to the line of scrimmage against a defense like this, it's going to be nigh impossible for you to string together consistent drives offensively to go and get yourself 7 points. So I can see New England potentially having to settle for 3, if not once, twice, in what is going to be a low-scoring game. That can be really critical. So for me, that's going to be the biggest thing. Also, just touching on Drake May there and his sacks, he's also fumbled 6 times this season, this off-season alone, with 4 of them last week or 2 weeks ago against the Texans, 3 weeks ago against the Texans. And he's lost 3 of them. That he's going to have to cut that out if he wants to be who he needs to be in this game. If he turns the ball over at that rate in this game, I think they'll struggle to put any points on the board at all. He really needs to step up and realize what he's doing. And I think part of that falls on Josh McDaniels as well. I can see potentially a lot of, certainly early in the game, screen plays or like short digs, like something just get him going and feeling a bit more comfortable in the game. I don't think Sam Darnold's going to need that, so certainly I think Seattle can get up early. Um, Not by loads. Again, like New England's defense is very good, but I can see that happening because you don't want you also in terms of the feeling of the game for Drake May, you don't want him to be feeling like he is taking all these sacks. He's fumbled maybe, which has been recovered by Seattle, and all of a sudden he's in a spiral because it's the biggest stage that there is, and he's cost his team big. Um, that that's going to be a crucial part of this game. So, looking at the game overall, it's a 4.5 point spread, which for the Super Bowl is fairly large. Um, Teams aren't often separated by that number of points pre-game, and I do think New England's going to cover, but I think Seattle overall comes out on top. I've got the game being 21-17 to Seattle. I think potentially that could be a bit misleading because I think Seattle is going to be up and then New England's going to have to push, and New England could grab a late touchdown or field goal to then try an onside kick or something to make that, to get it to that scoreline. But in reality, I don't think it's going to feel as close as that. I just think Seattle's better. They've had a harder strength of schedule than New England. New England has the easiest in the league. New England's O-line is not good, and going against the defensive front that Seattle's got, I think it'd be really scary for them. And yeah, overall, I think Seattle deserve it. They got doubted throughout the year because of Sam Darnold, and everybody wanted to see what he was going to look like in the playoffs. And now, looking back and seeing that he's sort of overcome his demons in the playoffs, I think it's pretty clear to see that Seattle is just a cut above the rest. And whilst I think New England are going to keep it close, as you can see there, and Vrabel is a fantastic coach, he's going to find ways to keep them in the game. Ultimately, I just think there's going to be too much in Seattle for New England to overcome. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is move on and have a bit of a look ahead into next year, because I think now is a good time to do a review of the coaching situation around the league. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my top 5 coaching moves of the 2026 season and have a look into how it's going to impact the team, the organization, and the coach themselves. Number 5 for me is going to be Raheem Morris. In general, I'm a big fan of coaches that they've shown that they are good enough at their job to go and be a head coach, but then they didn't cover themselves in glory, but they were sort of competent. I'm a big fan of those guys when they drop back into the roles that they really excelled in, being picked up. And the 49ers have clearly identified this. I look at somebody like Matt Eberflus, for example. He went away from the Bears having been completely disgraced, basically. He was there in Dallas last year. Defense wasn't good, and he's been let go. That is different to this. Raheem Morris was a fantastic defensive coordinator for years, most recently winning the Super Bowl with the Rams before he was picked up for this job by Atlanta. And then it hasn't worked out for him at Atlanta, but he's coming in now to 49ers team, which the offense is going to score points. They've got Kyle Shanahan. They always do. He is a coach that is more than capable of going into San Francisco, taking the talent that they do have. They've got, granted, they had injuries, but players like Fred Warner, who, fantastic player, leader on defense, Nick Bosa as well, injured this season, but fantastic player. Get those guys fit, which, it's not his job, but make sure they're fit and ready to go next year. And this defense can be really, really good. Pair it with Kyle Shanahan's offense. I think this is a fantastic move. Coming up at number 4, Eric Bieniemy. This one hurt me a little bit, having left the Bears, but he's a fantastic coach. I'm a big advocate for Eric Bieniemy to be a head coach at some point. The drop off from him to Matt Nagy at the Chiefs, across his 4 years that he was there, 2018 to 2022, they led the league with 30.1 points per game across that span. Now, under Matt Nagy for the last 3 years, they've been middle of the pack, 21.9 points per game. And when you've got Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, that's not really acceptable, I don't think. Eric Bieniemy is going to get in there, hold people accountable. He's going to lean into Andy Reid's creativity and the ability of Patrick Mahomes and the other guys on that offense. I think it's a fantastic pickup, really. He's already familiar with the building, the organization, the players. Really, really strong move from Casey. And I do wonder if potentially it's going to unlock the fireworks show again, or whatever you want to call it. I do think it's a really, really good hire. So props to the Chiefs. Coming in at number 3, Mike McDaniel. I'm a big fan of Mike McDaniel. I don't think that he ended up in a situation yes, it's his job to ultimately make the decisions, but I think just the situation at Miami wasn't great. He was also almost a victim of his own success. I don't think Tua Tagovailoa is that guy, and Mike McDaniel got so much out of him that he ended up getting paid a contract that they couldn't move off of or have any flexibility with to build around him. So I think he's really been sort of unfairly maligned, and I do really think that pairing him in that Chargers offense with Justin Herbert and some of the weapons they've got there, if they can keep their O-line fit, which seems to be a problem every single year for them, but if they can keep it fit or relatively fit, and if he can add that genius level creativity to this offense with somebody like Justin Herbert in there, they can be a sensational offense. And then you take the other side of the ball and Jim Harbaugh, who's trying to instill that hard-nosed, gritty football. I think this team has really, really upgraded with this move, and it's dangerous. That division now with Denver and KC, it's going to be an absolute bloodbath for the Raiders and Fernando Mendoza if they don't really, really go and invest this season. It could be a trial by fire for him. Coming in at number 2, somebody I'm a big fan of, actually, Brian Daboll. I think he is somewhat of a quarterback whisperer. Everywhere he goes and every QB he works with, they seem to develop and progress really, really well. You look at his time in Buffalo with Josh Allen, and then at New England, not New England, the New York Giants. Daniel Jones really came on, and he's now showing that he's a passable QB with the Colts, and getting him in to work with Cam Ward, I think is a really, really good idea. He's creative as a coach. He's going to go in there, be able to unlock some of the potential that they've got. There's a few young players on that team that I look at and think they could be, they could be workable pieces. He's going to go in there, make sure that Cam Ward is firing on all cylinders, developing into what they hope he can be. I'm not 100% sold on Cam Ward, but I saw signs like some of the plays that he made last season. There was one play which got called. I can't remember. I think he was called down when he sort of leapt forward, and I think his knee touched the ground just as he was releasing this like lateral throw from what looked like it was gonna. He was gonna. The play was done, and it was like a real sign that potentially there's a player in there. And if anybody's going to get out of him, I think Brian Dable could be that guy. Number one, I feel like it's almost a no-brainer, right? Anytime you add somebody like John Harbaugh to your organization, you've had a massive upgrade. He is going in there and he's going to have full control to do whatever he wants in the organization. They believe they've got their guy in Jackson Dart. They've got neighbours. They've got a strong defensive front. I really, really like this. I really like this. John Harbaugh is, look, it's hard to say when something like this happens how much of an impact the lack of success with Lamar was. They won a lot of games, but they couldn't get anything done in the playoffs. Ultimately, he's a defensive coach. He's going to go into New England. He's going to go into New York. Keep doing that. He's going to go into New York. He's going to turn them into a gritty team, just like his brother's doing in LA with the Chargers. He's going to go in there, turn them into a gritty team, get working on Jackson Dart and turning him into a real player, just as John Harbaugh's helped with Lamar Jackson. And I think it is just a fantastic hire. I would be really excited as a Giants fan going into next year and for the future. Okay, so I want to finish the episode with just sort of like an interesting thought that I had, because I was just reviewing the season almost, and Sam Darnold's been a real talking point and the rejuvenation of his career. And in general, I'm a big fan of these reclamation projects because ultimately these guys with good pedigree, they come into the league, they're sort of widely recognized as a talented player, and then they go into a situation which is just terrible. You're not going to be able to get the performance that you want out of that guy, but you're just hoping that he can overcome all the odds, and then they get like tossed to the side. I don't think that that's a good way of running an organization, and I think these guys are falling out of the league starting positions because of the way that they're managed rather than their lack of ability. So when I look at somebody like Mac Jones, he played really solid football in his first year at New England. And then for some reason, they went and put a defensive guy as their offensive coordinator, which is just bizarre. And unsurprisingly, that didn't work. So everything kind of fell apart for Mac Jones there. And he was never really the same until he's come into San Francisco under Kyle Shanahan. And I think he looked really good this year. Not like franchise changing good, but can he be a guy that comes in on a prove it deal and takes your franchise to the next level? I think absolutely he can be that. Let's get into the reasons why. So firstly, of course, is his performance this year. He played 8 games whilst Purdy was injured. Despite having a depleted offense, Brandon Ayuk out, George Kittle out, he had a passer rating of 97.4, 13 TDs to 8 interceptions. It's not amazing, but it's serviceable, and his completion percentage was 69.6%, which is good. The 5-3 record that he had across those 8 games, the 3 losses were to the Bucks when they were playing really good football before they just fell apart. The Texans and then the LA Rams. So like those losses, you can't really hold too much against him for those. Like you are going to lose some of these games, and winning 5 games, what's not to like? Next reason, I think, is probably the most important one: the Kyle Shanahan factor. Kyle Shanahan, and to be honest, the whole Shanahan tree, they're all really, really good with QBs. Kyle Shanahan had Sam Darnold in San Francisco before he went to Minnesota, and he likened him to Steve Young. Everybody thought that he was barking mad until he went to Minnesota, lit it up. Granted, fell apart a little bit towards the end of the season in the meaningful games, but then he's been picked up by Seattle and shown exactly what Kyle Shanahan was talking about. Having that kind of impact on a player who clearly has ability but has just not been in the right place to show that ability is exactly the same thing that Mac Jones needs, where he's sort of been in that situation that he doesn't want to be in. He then comes away, gets coached up in a good situation by a top tier coach. Can he then move somewhere else, having learned what he's learned, and go and take the next step and be that guy for people? I absolutely believe he can be. Touching on it briefly already, his first round pedigree. The same with Sam Darnold. I mean, Sam Darnold was a number 3 pick, and Mac Jones, I believe, was mid-range. I think he was 16. First round pedigree. It's really important. That means that he was widely regarded as a very talented player. And the QB class that he went in was pretty good as well. Like, if he was in a class like last year's class, I think he would have been picked a lot higher than that. So the first round pedigree, along with that coaching, I just think it sort of gets overlooked in many respects, and it's really, really important that people remember who these guys were before they got into these either good or bad situations. Lastly, for me, I think the Rams is a great landing spot. You're working with a coach in Sean McVay that you know is going to get the best out of the QBs that he's got there. That Baker Mayfield being a prime example when he played, who was it? The Panthers on 48 hours notice and went and led a game-winning drive. Sean McVay's going to get the best out of him. Stafford looks like he's coming back, so you sit him for a year behind Stafford, learn the system, learn from Sean McVay. If Sean McVay likes what he sees, which I think he will, give him. You can do your franchise a service by giving him, I don't know, 15 million a year, maybe 20 million a year. Almost none of it guaranteed, so it'll be easy to move off of for 3 or 4 years. And he can be your guy after Stafford. You don't need to be lights out in the Sean McVay system to have success. Is Mac Jones Matthew Stafford? No, obviously he's not. But can he do Matthew Stafford-esque job managing the offense? Absolutely he can. He's shown it in his first year in New England, and he's shown it this year with a depleted Niners offense. I really, really think that the Rams, instead of trying to move assets to try and draft higher up this year in a not super talented class, I think you try and see if Mac Jones can be your guy. I mean, you sit him behind Stafford for a year, so you'll get to have a look at him and run it from there. I really think that could be a solution for the Rams, which doesn't mean they give up loads of assets, and you also get a year to look at the guy before you sign on to not even really a marriage, because it won't be a lot of guaranteed money, but before you go and commit to having him start in games. So let me know what you think. That is my sort of hot-esque take for the week. That is also going to do it for this episode of Unsportsmanlike Conduct. If you're listening and have any opinions or topic suggestions, drop it in the comments, let us know, and can definitely have a look at doing those in future episodes. As always, thank you for listening. Stay safe out there.